Dear friends, this is Dr. Jaya Joshi. I'll be giving you lecture on mechanical properties in dental materials, which is the most important part in dental materials. Now, these are the contents of my lecture, but I'll be dividing my lecture in maybe 2 or 3 lectures. Now, what do you mean by mechanical properties? Now, mechanical properties are nothing but the properties that deals with the applied forces. Now, in dentistry, various materials are used. Some materials are used inside the oral cavity, and some materials are used outside the oral cavity. Now, these materials, they are exposed to different types of forces. Inside the oral cavity, the materials are exposed to masticatory forces, and outside the oral cavity during fabrication, the materials undergo different types of forces during its fabrication. Now, in this picture, you can see so many changes are occurring in the object when the forces are applied. So basically, mechanical properties are the properties that deals with the applied forces. Now, what is the importance of mechanical properties in dentistry? Now, not only mechanical properties, but other properties are also very much important in dentistry. Now, dentist's role is similar to that of a civil engineer's role. Now, civil engineer, whenever he constructs any building, he has the full knowledge of the materials which he will be using in that building. And based on that knowledge, he designs the structure. And on this scientific basis, when the building is constructed, then that building will last for many years. So, same is the case in dentistry. The dentist also has the same role. Now, dentist uses different material during his practice, and if he has full knowledge of the material, then only he can select the material, and most of the prognosis of the treatment is dependent upon selection of the material. So let us see the importance of mechanical properties in dentistry. So it helps to determine how well the material can withstand the masticatory forces inside the oral cavity. Now, inside the oral cavity, suppose if you want to place a restoration in maxillary first molar. Now, if the material is not strong enough, then it will not resist the masticatory forces and the failure will occur. So you should have the knowledge of strengths of all the materials which you are using inside the oral cavity. Then it allows the dentist to select the materials which closely matches the natural mechanical behavior of the tooth. This is very important. The property should match with that of the natural mechanical behavior of the tooth. And the third one, it helps the dentist to design the restoration which can withstand anticipated stresses and minimize the risk of failure. So the dentist can design the restoration if he's planning of some fixed partial denture or something like that. Then he can anticipate the stresses and accordingly he can design the restoration and minimizes the risk of failure. So mechanical properties are very, very important in dentistry. Now, as we have seen, mechanical properties deals with forces. So first we will see what do you mean by force. Now, in this picture, you can see this person is pushing one object. So this pushing is the action. Pushing is the action. And because of this action, there is a change in the motion of the object. So basically, there is one action which is causing change in the motion. So how will you define force? It is an action which produces or tends to produce or tends to produce or changes motion of the body. And it is measured in terms of mass into acceleration. So that simple it is. Depending upon the direction of the forces, forces are basically classified into three, that is tensile, compressive, and shear. So you can very well see in this diagram, tensile means stretching type of forces, compressive means compression of the object, and shear means sliding motion in the object. And the units of measurements of force are pounds, kilograms, or newtons. Now, the next important, or you can say the first mechanical property in dentistry is stress and strain. So let us first see what is psychological stress. I'll try to correlate the psychological stress with the mechanical stress, then it will become easier for you to understand. So what is a psychological stress? Now, stress is nothing, but it is a reaction of the body to some external changes or external stimuli or some trigger, some external trigger. So basically, it is the body's reaction to this external stimuli. Now, stress today, it has become so common that even the KG students are under stress. Now, basically, students have various causes which will put them into stress. So, these are the different causes which are resulting into stress, that is relationship problems, then major life events, or financial problems, or perfectionism, negative self-talk, children and family. And for you students, the major cause of the stress is you're not able to manage the time. Then secondly, exam is the most commonly stress triggering factor. Now, to this stress, now if the exam is coming and you have not studied well, the course is too much, and you're not able to study, then that will put you into stress. So, how it is seen that you are stressed? So, there are certain symptoms, common stress symptoms, that is irritability, loss of appetite, then headache, back pain, digestive problems, lack of motivation. Okay. So, this is the reaction of the body to the stress. So same way you can correlate it with the mechanical stress. So mechanical stress means, how will you define stress? So it is defined as the internal resistance or the reaction force developed inside the body to the external stimuli or force that is equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. Okay. Now, stress is the internal resistance. Now, to build that internal resistance, there has to be some external stimuli in the form of force. So, it is not the force, it is the internal resistance of the object to the external stimuli or external force, which is called as a stress. Now, it is a well-known fact that to each and every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. So same way, if you're applying force, there will be equal and opposite reaction. As we cannot measure the internal force, we are measuring stress in terms of external force by measuring the external force per unit area. Now here you can see, if I'm stretching one object, that is the forces are opposite in direction, so the internal resistance will be developed, that is the forces are towards each other, that is exactly opposite. So this is called as stress. So always keep it in mind that stress is the internal resistance to the external forces. It is expressed in terms of force per unit area. So we are measuring external force per unit area, and it is measured as pounds per square inch in English system of measurement and newtons per meter square in international system of measurement. Now, depending upon the direction of the forces, again, there are three types of stresses, that is tensile, compressive, and shear. And these are the self-explanatory diagrams of these stresses, that is tensile, compressive, and shear. Now, when you see clinically, now not a single stress is seen whenever the material is exposed to forces. You may find two stresses or three different types of stresses at a time. Now, here you can see a picture of a fixed partial denture. So, if this tooth is exposed to the masticatory forces, then in the upper area you will find compression, in the lower area you will find tension. Now, why this is important, that if the material has good compressive and good tensile strength, then this fixed partial denture will stay for a longer period of time. Then the shear stress, that is, here you can see a bracket which has been bonded on the tooth structure. And if you want to debond the bracket, now if you're pulling that bracket and if the materials stress, the tensile stress is good, tensile strength is good, the bracket will not debond easily. But if you are applying the parallel forces, that is shear type of forces, and if the shear strength of the cement is less, then the bracket can get easily debonded. Now, as I told you, there are different types of stresses which are seen in one material. Now, this is a perfect example of complex stresses, which is also called as flexural or bending. Here, there is one rod which is supported at two ends, and the force is applied in the center of this beam. Now, when you're applying force in the center of the beam, which is supported at two ends, then you will find compression, tension, and shear, all the three types of stresses together. Now coming to strain, as I told you that body reacts to the external event. So it is the body's reaction. So similarly, object also reacts to the external forces. So how it is reacting? It will show change in the dimension. So basically, strain is defined as a change in dimension per unit dimension. Okay. And it is a dimensionless quantity. Now this strain may be either elastic or it may be plastic. Now, everyone knows what is elastic and what is plastic. But for your understanding, I'll tell you elastic means whatever changes are occurring, they are reversible in nature. That is, they will go back to their natural or original dimensions. Not reversible, but they will go back to the original dimensions. And plastic means when some amount of permanent deformation has taken place, that is called as a plastic deformation. Now, for example, if you stretch a rubber band, suppose you take a rubber band which is 2 centimeter long, and if I stretch it, it will become 4 centimeter. If you relieve the forces, it will go back to 2 centimeter. But if you keep on doing it, one time will come that when it goes back to its original dimensions, now the dimensions are no longer 2 centimeter, but now they have become 2.2. So this 0.2 is nothing but a permanent deformation, or we call it as a plastic deformation. So strain may be either elastic or plastic. Now, depending upon this types of stresses, strain may be either tensile, compressive, and shear. So again, you can see the diagrammatic representation of all the three types of strains. Now, if you plot a graph of stress against strain, then you will find a proportional limit, that is a particular point till which this line is a straight line. That means it is the maximum stress that a material will sustain without a deviation from linear proportionality of stress to strain. So up to that limit, stress is proportional to strain. It is same. Stress and strain are proportional to each other. So what the Hooke's law is saying, within the elastic limit, strain of the material is proportional to stress. Now, next point is elastic limit. Now, elastic limit and proportional limit are more or less same. Now, elastic limit shows the elastic behavior of the material, and the proportional limit tells you the proportionality between stress and strain. So what is elastic limit? It is the greatest stress to which a material can be subjected such that it will return to its original dimensions when the forces are released. Okay. So elastic limit. So within this limit, whatever changes are occurring or whatever strain is occurring is elastic in nature. Now, next point is your yield point. It is the stress at which the material begins to function in a plastic manner. Now, as I told you, till proportional limit or till elastic limit, the stress and strain is proportional to each other. But beyond that point, there is some or slight changes they start taking place, or slight change in the dimension of the material, which we call it as a plastic type of strain. So yield point is that point just beyond the point of your elastic limit where the plastic deformation starts. So that point is called as yield point. Now, what is ultimate strength? Ultimate strength, it is the maximum stress that a material can withstand before failure. Now, from yield point, the permanent deformation starts. Now, depending upon the resistance of the material will go on deforming, and one point comes where, which is called as a break point, where the material will fracture. Now, just before the fracture of the material, the point is called as ultimate strength. So ultimate strength is nothing but the maximum stress that a material can withstand before failure. Means the material will first resist the forces by deforming plastically, and at one limit, or when it crosses that limit, it fractures. So that is the ultimate strength. Now, what is elastic modulus or modulus of elasticity, also popularly known as Young's modulus? So my Young's modulus again is nothing but is a ratio of stress and strain within the elastic limit. So it is measured in terms of stress upon strain. Now, basically, you will find the values of elastic modulus in dentistry. Now, this represents the stiffness of the material. More the amount, or more is the value of elastic modulus that shows the material is rigid. That means even after application of maximum stress, the amount of changes which are seen in the material are quite less. That means the material is rigid in nature. It represents the stiffness, and the units of measurements are pounds per square inch and megapascals. Now coming to Poisson's ratio. Now, Poisson's ratio is again one important entity because it gives you the information about how the dental material will deform in different directions under stress, which is very, very important for selecting materials that closely matches the natural tooth structure and minimizes stress concentration at tooth restoration interface. Now, in this diagram, you can see when you are stretching something, the object will increase in the length, but it will decrease in the cross-sectional area. Same way, if you're compressing something, then the lateral, that is in the cross-sectional area, the length is increasing, and longitudinally it is decreasing. So basically, Poisson's ratio is the ratio of lateral strain to the axial or longitudinal strain within the elastic limit. Now we will see what is the importance of Poisson's ratio in dentistry. So in dentistry, it helps in material selection. By considering the Poisson's ratio of a dental material, the dentist can easily select the material which will match with that of the natural tooth structure. So it will help reducing the stress related problems. Second is understand stress distribution analysis. Understanding the Poisson's ratio allows the dentist uh, for predicting how the stress distribution will be when the material is exposed to the masticatory forces. And third is it helps the dentist preventing micro leakage. Because if there is a well-matching Poisson's ratio between the restoration and the tooth, then definitely it will prevent reducing the micro leakage, which will further prevent the secondary decay. So that is the importance of Poisson's ratio. So my dear friends, here I am ending with the first lecture, and the second lecture. In the second lecture, I'll be covering the rest of the properties. Thank you so much.